it's Mark from Post Oak Pits and Poles, and it's time for Brisket for Beginners. I talked to a guy just last night, and he said, you know what, I've done everything on my backyard smoker. I've done ribs, I've done chicken, turkey, all sorts of other things, but he's never done a brisket. And I said, why? And he goes, I'm just intimidated. It's a little scary. It's such a big piece of meat, takes a long time, and of course it's pretty pricey. So we're gonna walk you through the basics on how to pick one, season, trim it, season it, and get it on the smoker and have a good backyard experience smoking one of these big Texas-style briskets. One of my biggest takeaways from doing briskets now for the last 5 years is, I know beef is expensive, but there are 3 basic meat grades, and buy the one that you can afford. This one is a USDA choice brisket. So there is select, there's choice, and there's prime, and then above that there's actually the Wagyu briskets, which are supposed to be amazing, but they are super duper expensive. But this is kind of a mid-range one, and it is listed as USDA choice. It will be listed right here on the packaging, straight from the packing plan. So buy the one that you can afford. The highest on the list, choice or prime. Highly recommend doing prime for a lot of our briskets. These 2 right here are some really good big choice briskets. This is probably about a 12 pounder, and this one's probably about a 16 or 17 pounder. This one's still frozen. So when you go to HEB, and that's where I get my briskets, what you're looking for is you're looking for a brisket that doesn't have any big gashes on the fat cap side. It's got a nice even muscle all the way around. This one's got a huge mohawk and huge point on it. This is the flat part of the muscle. This is the point. Also what you're looking for, and you can see the size difference in these 2 briskets, you're also looking for, I mean, again, an excellent even fat cap here, nice even thickness. What you don't want is you want to try to avoid one that's too skinny on this end. A very thin flat will cook way, way faster than this point, even after we trim it up. So like this one's pretty small, so we're gonna wind up trimming a lot of that off, and we'll use it for burgers and chili and stuff like that later. This one that I actually thought out to cook for you guys today, again, it's a big boy, but I mean, look at that fat cap, and nice marbly throughout, and it's got a nice uniform thickness on this end. So we'll take some of the edges off of here, but this one in my mind is a good one. Here we show you some more of that. Again, a really nice brisket here. It's going to require minimal trimming on the meat side. We're going to take out some of this decal fat, and we're going to cut off this mohawk right here. So the next step now, once you get it home, is to unwrap it, pat it dry with paper towels, and then we get to trimming. And I do a pretty aggressive trim because we want this to have nice even slices, and we want a lot of meat for burgers and stuff that we're gonna grind up later for different recipes. And then we're gonna take a lot of this extra fat, especially from this side right here, and we're gonna render that down for tallow, and we'll use that for cooking and keeping our brisket nice, lean, and moist. Hi guys, here we are with our beautiful, it's about a 16, 17 pound USDA choice certified Angus brisket. Absolutely beautiful. This is from a place called Dimcoda Ranch. I don't know where that's at, I have to look that up later. But anyway, what we're gonna do is we're gonna open the package up and start to get a lot of these juices out right here. I always like to open my vacuum seal bag on this side, so if I accidentally slice into the meat, it's on the fatty side versus the pretty side. All right, let's get it open. Pretty straightforward, guys. This is easy. And again, all this is a lot easier than you think. You learn through trial and error. I pre-tear a bunch of paper towels, and then that way I could just grab them. Just a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not a barbecue expert. This is just the way I do things. So if you do it different, that's awesome. You do you. This is just how I do things, and I'm still learning, and that's the great thing about barbecue, is that you know, you can continue to be a student of it. You'll hear from pit masters everywhere in Texas, and they say, I'm always learning something. The important thing is that you go out there and you have fun and you just try. Wow, this is a big boy. Getting a lot of that off. There's still a little bit of moisture on here, but that's okay because it'll help the seasonings stick better. You may hear a lot of people say, well, after I'm done trimming, I use a binder. I use mustard or olive oil or Worcestershire or whatever as a binder to get it to stick, to get your seasonings to stick to it, whether you're using salt and pepper blend or any sort of your favorite barbecue rub, and that's fine. I don't use any binder at all. I think sometimes it adds to the flavor. I've tried mustard, I didn't care for it, so we're just gonna put straight salt and pepper blend on and then a little bit of my buddy up at Meat Church, some of his seasoning as well, and that's all we're gonna put on it today. We're gonna just take a look at it and we're gonna talk about what we're gonna trim, but I'm gonna start trimming on the fat side. Okay, so I grabbed 2 pans. One's gonna be for meat trimmings and one's gonna be for the best quality fat. And we need some of that fat in our beef trimmings because if you're not careful, your brisket trimmings, which you turn into meat for chili or burgers, can be way too lean. Fat is flavor, so we need some good fat mixed in with the trimmings, but we're gonna render that tallow later on today. So what I typically do is just kind of give it a look over and see. So we're gonna wanna cut that fat down by about half there, and I'm gonna do the best I can on camera. I'm not used to doing a trim on camera, so it's a little nerve-wracking, but we're gonna get through it together. I see a lot, we're gonna do a lot of trimming on this brisket. It's not gonna look the same by a long stretch when we're done. This whole mohawk is gonna come off. So what I wanna do is while the brisket is still cold, I wanna start trimming this fat cap down. And a little secret that I learned is about an hour before you wanna start trimming your brisket, put it back in the freezer because this soft fat is easier to trim when it's gotten really cold and it's firmed up and it's a little bit more solid. So we're gonna do the best we can today. So I'm gonna start by cutting off this mohawk right here. That's a big chunk of meat, but that's gonna make fantastic burgers. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out, there's a big chunk of hard fat, and that's not gonna be good. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna put that in the meat trimmings and I'll take that off later. We'll put that in the tallow tray. So the goal when you're trimming a brisket is you want to make it as aerodynamic as possible. The slices look better when you slice it, but the important thing is you want the smoke going over it evenly, nice even smoke flow. So we're going to take more of this off here. So again, we're just doing our initial trimming here. So what you want to do is, Timmy, why don't you come over here? I'm going to show you this side. So what you want to do is you want to start and again have the sharpest knife possible. So what you want to do is you want to keep making cuts, and as you're making cuts, make sure you don't cut into the red meat. Just keep watching as you're going and you'll kind of be able to see, and there's still a ton of fat there, so we can keep trimming all day. That is the kind of fat that we're going to render down to tallow. That's going to be beautiful later on. Once it melts, it turns into kind of what we call liquid gold. We're going to pour that all over our more finished product here. So while this is still pretty cold, I'm gonna keep trimming this fat cap down even more, and just take your time. And if you accidentally cut into the red, that's okay too. So see, I got a little close right there. I didn't go all the way through, but I'm getting a little closer, so I know I need to stop there. I know there's a lot more fat. I'm just gonna continue to trim here and just kind of keep an eye on my thicknesses. Wow, we're gonna have a ton of fat. The key, guys, is don't be in a rush. Brisket takes time. It's a big, expensive cut of meat. You want to treat it well. And if you take the time to properly trim it, you will be rewarded in the end. Those slices will have this beautiful ribbon of rendered fat on the very top when you get to cutting it for whoever you're going to serve it to. It's a beautiful thing. We'll trim the side here so we can double check our thickness. And look how our fat tray is filling up so fast. Once this is rendered down, you run it through some cheesecloth to filter out the bigger chunks of what's left of the fat, and then you just put it in a mason jar, throw it in the refrigerator. It'll last a long time. Use it for cooking. The tallow is amazing to cook with. All right, so this is the thinnest part of the brisket, and it's gonna cook too fast compared to the rest, so we're gonna go ahead and trim that off, and what you do is you just kind of even it out. Just have to have nice clean edges here. Sometimes you gotta put your hand underneath it to get into some more of that fat. You don't want to trim all the fat off. You need it. That helps protect it in the fire from the extreme heat. All right, so I've trimmed the fat cap kind of down the way I wanted. I left about a 1/4 inch thickness there. We're gonna trim off some of this silver skin on top on the meaty side. This is all that hard decal fat here, and we're gonna trim a lot of that out too. And I'm gonna go ahead and do that right here. I told you guys that this brisket would be kind of a shadow of its former self by the time we're done, and we're just about done trimming. Got it nice and aerodynamic. Let me take it just a little bit more off the top here and start rounding out these edges on the point. Again, we're not wasting hardly any of this. Wow, that's pretty brisket. It looks really, really nice. We're about done trimming. I'm pretty much gonna leave it the way it is. So what we did is we made it more aerodynamic, and what you can do is when you're done is just kind of shape it the way you want it just a little bit and make it nice and clean. So this is gonna cook more evenly now that it's kind of a more uniform thickness. I told you guys I do a pretty aggressive trim. We got that much for grinding, that much for rendering for tallow, and I don't need all this stuff right here. I've got more than enough. So next step after we're done now is we're gonna season this bad boy and let it sit for an hour, and then we're gonna get our fire started. I've always used aluminum pans from HEB. Get the biggest one you can. These are a Christmas present I just got. Cutting board on the bottom. I believe these are called Easy Drips, something like that. But anyway, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our brisket right into here. I'm gonna flip this over. We'll start with the fat side. Keep it simple with your seasoning. You're looking for a salt pepper blend. I buy HEB's. This has never let me down. Good solid coat of this. And what you wanna remember is keep it clean too. Dirty hand, clean hand. You don't wanna cross-contaminate. So what we do is you wanna go up high, and again, your tub's gonna keep all your seasonings inside. It doesn't go everywhere, but what you wanna do is you wanna start just a nice even coat. The higher you get, the more even spread you're gonna get. Go ahead and push that pepper and salt in. And don't forget the sides. All right, so that's the fat side. And I'm gonna go ahead and do my second ingredient. And I usually only use salt and pepper, but I'm gonna use Meat Church Barbecue's Holy Cow, and you can buy this at HEB too. Just a light coating on this. I think it adds more flavor. And I love it when the bark actually packs a punch and has a nice peppery, rich flavor to it. So we're gonna do the same here. Just a nice light coat across the top. And again, be liberal with it. I've never accidentally over-seasoned a brisket. The best part about these, whether you do aluminum tray or these cool collapsible tubs, is it keeps everything contained. But again, do your best to keep your seasoning in one hand and flip the meat with your other hand. Now it's time to let this sit for an hour. Time to get our fire started. Our smoker is now heated up, and let's go ahead and get the brisket on. And what we're gonna do is we wanna take the point end, the thicker end, and put that towards the fire, which is down there. So we're gonna put this right on the fattier part here towards the fire. The point is back this way, and we're gonna close that up, and we're not gonna look at it. Open it up for 4 hours. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. One of the big debates in doing a brisket is whether you have the fat side up or down. You can do it either way. I do mine fat side down right now because the heat source is coming from the bottom. This is an offset cooker or wood fire smoker. So we've got the smoke coming from the side and underneath. So I've got the pretty side up, fat side down. On my pellet smoker, definitely do fat side down because the heat is coming directly from the bottom. But here's what I do. Fat side down, and then later on, once that bark is set, and the bark is set in 4 or 5 hours, when it reaches temperature about 170 degrees, we're gonna wrap it up in butcher paper, and then I will flip it, and it will be fat side up, and then the heat, and later on in the cook, that will continue to render that fat cap, and that will keep the meat below the fat cap on the bottom side, juicier, moister. So right now we are fat side down. Okay, now that our smoker is going, we can mess with the tallow right now. And here's all the fat that we trimmed off of our brisket, or at least a lot of it. And if I put this whole tray in right now, it would overflow later on. So I'm just gonna take most of this and put it in cast iron, and then I'm gonna set that right in there on the smoker. So a good bunch of this is gonna go in here. So this is just gonna go straight into the smoker in the back corner, and we will let that go. All right, our brisket's been on just over 2 hours, and it's a good time to talk about a couple of things. One, we're gonna check on our tallow and just take a sneak peek at the brisket, and if it's looking dry, we can spritz it with a couple different things. I usually use one thing, but I'm trying something new today. You can try either one. We're also going to talk about keeping your fire going. Let's start with checking on our tallow. Take a look, Tim. Here is our tallow that's already rendered by quite a bit. As a matter of fact, it's only going to go a little bit more, and then we can let it cool off and we'll filter that, and that's what we'll pour over our brisket later on. It gives it that rich fatty flavor and adds moisture to it. So I'm going to put that back in here, let that keep going. But take a look at our brisket right now. We're already seeing some bark formation, especially on the edges where it's seeing more heat. It has started to brown up, and it's starting to get a little dry on the top. So we have a couple options here. You can take just an average spray bottle, fill it half full of apple cider vinegar, and then fill the rest up with water. You can spritz it that way. That's what I normally use. Today I am trying something different. This is a half full bottle of Worcestershire sauce and the rest with water. And I've heard a lot of the pros use this too. So what we want to do is we don't want to oversaturate it. We just want to hit those areas that are looking drier. It's dry up here, and what we're doing is we're just adding some moisture. And what that does is that actually helps attract smoke. So that is a far cry, more moist. It's going to attract way more smoke, and we're good to go and close it back up, and we'll check it again in about 30 to 60 minutes. Let's talk temperatures. One of the ideal temperatures for brisket is right around 225 to 250 degrees, but it really does kind of depend on your fire and weather conditions. Today it's kind of chilly, and also on your smoker and the way it's built. And this is, of course, my first smoker, the offset smoker, and it really loves 275 degrees. I can build a small fire and it can still right around 275 degrees. But ideally for brisket, what you want to do is you want to start out low. You want to start about 200 degrees or so. After 3 or 4 hours, maybe bump up to 225, and then you finish around 250, 275. Today, we're gonna let it ride at 275 all day long. I'll continue to spritz it, and we're gonna have a pretty good brisket later on tonight. Next up, we're talking fire management, and that's making sure the fire is hot enough and is producing enough smoke to make it worth your time. But every smoker is a little bit different. And mine's kind of a beginner backyard smoker. It's an offset, so all your heat and your smoke are coming from over here, going through the cook chamber and coming out of our smokestack on this side. So what you want to do is once you get your fire going, you're going to keep feeding it. Not only fuel, but then you got to keep adding wood. I don't use wood chips. They burn too hot too fast, so I buy big bags of wood chunks from HEB. Today we are using hickory, and then later on we're going to switch over to pecan. But these wood chunks are up here on the top of my shelf of my fire chamber because they can warm up here, and if they are warmer, they actually catch fire quicker inside the chamber, especially on a nice cool day like today, but almost any day. So they're nice and warm. Let's take a look at our fire. All right, so we've got a nice charcoal bed going right now, and we've got one chunk that is burning perfectly right now, giving off great smoke. I do see that the charcoal bed is starting to drop down a little bit. It's getting very ashy, so I don't want that to go out or we're gonna have big problems. And so what I do is, Timmy, if you wanna pan over to here to the right, we've got a big bag of B&B charcoal right here. And this is not normal charcoal briquettes. This is lump post oak charcoal. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna feed some of that right into here to keep that fuel source going. Just kind of all around the edges. I don't even think I need all of this. Yeah, I'm not gonna do all of it. And that'll keep that basic fire source going. And then at this point, I can go ahead and add another chunk. You just keep feeding this all throughout the day, all throughout your cook. The key thing though is those wood chunks that keep on going. My favorite is post oak, and we'll talk about why in just a second. Let's talk about wood choices, and there are so many. And one of the things you want to try to avoid, if possible, at least in my experience and from 5 years of research, is that when it comes to briskets, if you can choose a hardwood, a mild hardwood, that helps you out. Mesquite, which we have a ton around here, sometimes that can be too pungent as far as the smoke. Down here in South Central Texas, we have a ton of post oak, and then we also have access to other woods like I buy at HEB. I told you today we're using hickory chunks. You can also use pecan chunks, post oak. And then when it comes to doing things other than brisket, say like turkey or poultry, any kind of poultry or ribs, you want to use a hardwood that's got some sweetness to it. So that would be like apple wood or also cherry wood as well. So those are great for those kinds of meats. But for this, we need a good mild hardwood. That would be hickory, pecan, or post oak. This is one of the things I highly recommend you do because it will pay dividends later. And it's taking those fat trimmings from when you trimmed up your brisket, putting them in a container, whether it be aluminum or cast iron, whatever, put it in there with the brisket, and let it render down into liquid gold that we will pour all over our brisket later on. So after a couple of hours on the smoker, this is what is left basically of that. It is all rendered down. And what we're gonna do is we're going to take out the larger chunks that haven't rendered down. We're gonna get rid of those. And then we're gonna take a mason jar and cheesecloth, but I've seen people use paper towels, coffee filters, just anything to help keep out those bigger pieces and kind of purify the tallow. And what I like to do is to take the mason jar top, and I like to push that cheesecloth down in there a little bit to create a bit of a indentation. And then I actually close this up so it doesn't want to go anywhere. So that's how I do it, like that. And then what we're going to do is going to take these big chunks, these big nasty chunks out, put them on paper towels, and that'll just get thrown away. Those are the bigger chunks I can find. So then what we're going to do is just slowly pour this in here. But that's just about good enough right there. This is what we're going to pour on our brisket later. There's more than enough to pour on whatever we don't use. We put it in the fridge, and it'll last pretty much forever. And when it's in the fridge, it looks like this. And it's one of the best things to cook in it. Liquid gold. All it takes is a little bit of time to go from this to this. All right, time to use our butcher paper to wrap up our brisket. All right. All right, brisket is looking good. It's been on for about 5.5 hours. It's got a fantastic bark on it, and it's got a little bit of moisture here on the top. I'm gonna take out my Bluetooth thermometer that I put in there a little bit earlier, and let's go ahead and wrap this baby up. One of the first things we're gonna do is move it to the side. Take your butcher paper and you spread it out nice and wide like this. And what we're gonna do is take our spray bottle. This is the half water, half apple cider vinegar. And we're just gonna spray down our water. This makes it a little more pliable, easier to work with. And then what we're gonna do next is we're gonna take our brisket and we're gonna put it right out here on the very end. and it's super juicy, that's for sure. Remember, for this, we're gonna go fat side up, so we gotta keep track, but we're gonna take our tallow that we have from earlier. Here we go. We're just gonna pour some of that tallow all over this. And some of it's already started to get a little chunky, but man, this just keeps it moist and adds even more flavor for sure. All right, I'm gonna turn everything around so I can wrap towards you, okay? Okay, all right, here we go. We're gonna wrap it as tight as we can. So you go over and you start folding. Keep the paper straight in front of you, like this. So this is fat side down, fat side up. Tuck it like a baby, real tight. Fat side down, keep wrapping. Fat side up. That's exactly what we want. You just take this piece and you fold it underneath. Now we are fat side up, and this is ready to go back onto the smoker to finish up. I'm going to smoke this until the brisket reads about 200 degrees. If you test the meat with a toothpick or thermometer, it should slide right in. If not, go longer. Next, wrap it in some old towels and throw it in a cooler to rest. The longer you let that happen, the more tender it'll be as juices redistribute and muscle fibers relax. Don't let it cool below 140 degrees. We're hungry, so our rest is about 2 hours. I'm just gonna check this real quick. It's perfect. It's about 160 degrees. It's just absolutely tender there. Oh my gosh, it went straight in, no resistance. So here's what you're looking for. It doesn't matter how long it takes. You want your brisket to have this kind of resistance when you put the thermometer on the inside. No resistance at all, hardly. This wound up being a 10 or 12 hour cook and about a 2 or 3 hour rest in the Yeti. So let's go ahead and unwrap it and take a look. Looking pretty good, man. What you want to do when you're slicing your brisket is you want to do your first cut right down the middle. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and see how it looks. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. Okay, I can already tell this has got a beautiful smoke ring. Take a look at that. Wow, and it's so juicy. Timmy, are you seeing this?
Yes, sir.
Oh my gosh, this turned out really well.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. All right, so here's the flat, here's the point. The grain on this muscle changes, so you want to slice this one all the way across. When you get down to the point, this fattier part, you actually want to go across. It just works better with the grain. So what we want to do here is so this is looking pretty good right now. Pretty good. All right, so that is the flat. Let's do the point. So we did that one this way, we're doing this one this way. And a lot of people like this really fatty part. Watch how this piece just kind of falls over as we cut it. I mean, look at that. A lot of people just love this fatty part. And I'm gonna go ahead and give it a taste. That's really good. Pretty good brisket. Not bad for a pretty quick cook. Oh, look at it, it's all falling apart as I cut it. It's pretty tender and obviously very juicy. Oh wow, just look at that, just coming apart as I slice it. So look at that meat. So it looks pretty good. So my favorite part is the leaner part down here. You never know how it's gonna be, how each brisket's gonna turn out. Moist, fatty, lean. All right, we've slapped this on our grill partner. Great way to keep hot food hot. Gonna serve it up to our friends. You need to get one for yourself. They're fantastic and they're made right here in San Antonio. Check it out at grillpartner.com. Enjoy from Post Oak Pits and Poles.